Hey everyone, we are Mike and Tess Play, and welcome back to Pokemon FireRed version.
Last time, Mike showed off a couple of really great places to grind.
Yes, and this time we're doing, well, Tess is going to be grinding in the background, which is going to be fun. And in this episode, in the name of the full guide, I'm going to be giving you a guide on how to build a good in-game team. A team which will be fun for you to use, as well as able to beat the game efficiently. So I'm just going to be going over the most important things, Pokemon in this game who are good fits for a really good in-game team, and just generally sort of talking about how to build an in-game team that's going to be able to beat the entirety of the game. So we're going to start with the first chart that we're throwing on screen. Offensive typings. The basic reasoning behind offensive typings are that offense is more important than defense in this game, in any Pokemon game, because just KOing things is the best thing to do. Now, here's what's interesting. The most famous offensive typing combination is Ice and Electric, Bolt Beam because of Thunderbolt and Ice Beam, because it is almost not resisted by any Pokemon and hits a lot of things for super effective damage. However, for the first 3 generations of Pokemon, there is an easier combination to get to nothing being able to resist you. Water and Normal hits absolutely everything for at least neutral damage, and is very easily accessed. Surf and Strength, being HMs and being learned by a lot of Pokemon, mean that those types are very easy to get to. And since nothing can resist you, you're basically perfect. There's not going to be anything that stands in your way if you just use a water type and a normal type. So that's a good reason why water types have been getting such a good look throughout this game, is because, hey, they can do damage to most things in it, and all you need is a normal move to back that up. After that, the best offensive types to have are Ground, Fighting, Ice, Rock, and Fire. These are the types that can hit 4 or more types for super effective damage. Now, that means that when you're adding them, which, by the way, they are very easy to combo. Water types usually learn Ice type moves, or at least you can teach them Ice Beam through the TM, viable TM. And many fighting types and ground types and rock types can learn ground, fighting, rock, and normal type moves. It's been probably the most frequent combination we've seen on screen. It's very easy to get those coverage options. Fire, a little bit less common, but Fire is also the type that can hit the most types for super effective damage that is the easiest to cover for if you don't have. After that, you really want to focus on having coverage on offense. So these are the moves that might not hit a lot of things for super effective damage, but can kind of fill in the holes, or can, just do what you need them to do. Starting with the Psychic type. I've said the whole game, Psychic power is huge in this game. It's because so few things resist it. It only hits Fighting and Poison types for super effective damage, and there are quite a few of those, including in the Elite Four, but the real value of the Psychic type is that it just doesn't get resisted all that much, especially in this game before Dark types existed. Next, either Ghost or Dark coverage is very important to have. The Ghost type and the Dark type on offense are almost identical. They hit all the same things for super effective damage. The only difference is that Ghost types can't hit normal types, and Fighting types resist Dark types. Or Dark type moves, that is. So you're basically only choosing, hey, do I want to be able to hit normal types, or do I want to be able to hit through Fighting types when you're choosing between those two. So you really should have one, but you don't need two. Up next, the other best coverage options would be Grass, Flying, and Electric. They hit multiple types for super effective damage, they can fill in some holes, and if you've got all of those types, which granted are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's like 12 of the 15 types. But if you have all of those, there's pretty much going to be nothing in the game that can stop you. The other types that are just kind of nice to have are Bug, Poison, Steel, and Dragon. Bug can have some use. I mean, it hits Psychic for super effective damage, along with Grass and Dark. But since there aren't Dark types in this game, and since a lot of the Grass types are Poison type, which resist Bug, it's kind of harder to recommend it. In addition to there not being all that many Bug types who have Bug moves that are actually usable on them. Poison only ever hits Grass for super effective damage, and if you've got a Fire or a Flying type, you're already doing that, or Ice, or Bug. Grass has a lot of weaknesses. Steel only hits Rock and Ice types in this game, which have lots of weaknesses already. And then Dragon only hits Dragon for super effective damage. It's not going to be resisted by all that much, so it's just nice to have. If you've got, say, a Charizard who, well, all I've got is Wing Attack and Flamethrower, and I just want another move that can do some damage. There are dragons to come, so yeah, Dragon Claw would be a good mix there. But that's kind of the ranking of the types, at least for this game. Which brings us to our next chart here. The physical versus special moves in this game that you definitely want to consider when you're building a team. In the first 3 generations, before the physical-special split made everything way, way better, the physical attacking types, which had their power and their damage based on attack, the attack stat a Pokemon has, were Rock, Poison, Ground, Flying, Bug, Normal, Ghost, Fighting, and Steel. On the other side, the special attacking types, made based off of special attack, were Water, Electric, Grass, Psychic, Fire, Ice, Dragon, and Dark. Now, you want to have a good mix. You may notice that of the types that I recommended, it was pretty much a mix. It kind of leaned physical on the better types, but ended out being pretty much even at the end. Special moves and physical moves, you definitely want to have both because some Pokemon have very high physical defense or very high special defense. Chansey having higher special defense, not very high, but with her HP, it is effectively that. And terrible physical defense is one great example. And on the other end, you have someone like Cloyster who can take physical hits all day, but a special move sneezing nearby them is pretty much going to score you that KO. Oh, she was jumping. I glanced up and a girl was jumping and you're running away. Sorry. The other thing is that you definitely... That's another thing to consider when you're choosing between Ghost and Dark as an offensive typing. Ghost is physical, Dark is special, so they do still have that difference. So, whichever end you want to hit on is the one you want to hit on. The best recommendation for building an in-game team, you definitely want to have at least one physical attacker and at least one special attacker. If you have a mixed attacker, that can totally count towards either/both of those statuses. So on our team, we have Blastoise and Nidoqueen, who absolutely qualify. Zinc qualifies a little bit for that as well. So we have kind of 3 mixed attackers. Then Dennis and Sir Oz are definitely physical attackers, while Pi is effectively just a special attacker. He's a little bit different because he does have a physical attack, but he basically only uses special attacks. The best possible mix there would be to have 2 physical attackers, 2 special attackers, and then 2 mixed ones who can lean one way or the other. The next most important thing to consider when building your team or preparing a team is location, location, location. Covering your primary weaknesses along the way and closing holes in your coverage is kind of the key here. And then hitting the weaknesses of your other Pokemon is kind of the last thing you want to consider. You want to be building your team based on, here's my starter, how do I cover its primary weakness, so that you can, take on your rival. And then kind of just closing in, making sure that you can hit everything in the game along the way. The basic structure, which is going to be our third chart here, is that for the first gym, you want to have somewhere between 1 and 3 Pokemon. And the structure here is so that you're spreading out the experience evenly and can have your team be where they need to be for the game. So first gym, 1 to 3 Pokemon. Second gym, 2 to 3 Pokemon. Third gym, 2 to 4 Pokemon. Fourth gym, 3 to 5 Pokemon. Fifth gym, 4 to 6. Sixth gym, 4 to 6 as well. Seventh gym, 5 to 6. And then by the time you get to the 8th gym and beyond, you definitely want to be rocking with a full team. Now, granted, you can always go lower than that. If you're able to find the coverage with a smaller mix of Pokemon and don't want to do the grinding that we're currently doing in the background here, that's certainly something that you can do. But, you know, if you follow that structure, you're not going to have any problems, and you're going to be gaining experience along the way. We basically followed that structure. We just cut our 6 Pokemon before the 4th gym, but you know, we were right on there for the rest of the game. The next thing to consider is defensive typings. Like I said, offense is way more important than defense in-game, but having defensive answers to your weaknesses is still something that is very important. What I usually recommend is to only have 3 Pokemon on your team at any one time with any particular shared weakness. We actually do have that on our team. We have multiple 3 weak elements to look out for here. But basically, as long as you only have 3, you're not going to be running into an opponent who you really can't beat. There are also certain ways to kind of determine, hey, am I able to handle this type even though it's a weakness? The first and most important thing is to have a hard counter. This would be something like having a ground type to take on electric types. A hard counter is one who I would consider as they are completely immune to the type you are weak to while hitting it for super effective damage. So ground can't take any damage from electric, and our team, in particular, Tess, if you wouldn't mind showing, that we have 3 Pokemon on our team who are weak to electric types, those being Sir Oz, Bolt, and Pi. But Carly, as a ground type, is a hard counter there. An ordinary counter would be just a Pokemon who resists the attacking type and is able to hit back for super effective damage. So, water versus fire, for that particular example, would do nicely. It's just, hey, I can switch in on this and then also KO it very quickly. The next level of defensive capabilities is a check. This would be something that, hey, they can't come in on an attacking type because they don't resist it, it'll hit them for full damage. But this would be something like a grass type versus a rock type. Grass hits rock for super effective damage, so if they are able to come in safely, they're going to score the KO, but they can't switch into it, so they're not a full counter. The next level down would be just having a neutral advantage. This would be more based on stats, say a normal type in this game versus a psychic type. A normal type is likely going to be able to use Shadow Ball, a move that is really good against psychic types, but they don't resist the psychic type, so it's not a safe switch in, and they're not gaining stab on the super effective attack that they're using. So it's an advantage, I would say, you know, especially say a Snorlax switching in on an Alakazam. The Snorlax is going to win that based on stats, even if he doesn't have Shadow Ball. But it's not a hard advantage. It's not a guarantee. The Alakazam could get lucky, basically. So, you know, those are kind of the levels that I consider. When you have 3 Pokemon with a shared weakness, 1 hard counter, 2 combination of either counters or checks, or 3 Pokemon remaining in your party who either check or are a neutral advantage against the remaining Pokemon are generally good enough to do so. You don't need more than that for in-game use because generally, okay, we've got a big weakness to electric type, we don't need more than 1 ground type. We've got a big weakness to the ice type. We don't really need more than, hey, we've got a Machamp and a Flareon, and also Blastoise is kind of a neutral advantage there. So, you know, we've got lots of combinations in our team, and that's kind of how you want to do it. When you only have 2 Pokemon who are weak to a specific type, you could go with either a hard counter or just an ordinary counter, or just a combination of 1 check and 1 neutral, or better than that, obviously. But that should be enough to handle any weakness that you have 2 Pokemon weak to, because it's not half your team that's weak to it, it's just, okay, I need some sort of an answer to that particular Pokemon. And then if you have just 1 weakness that only 1 Pokemon has, any Pokemon is able to, like anything can handle that. just even just one neutral advantage is enough to handle a one Pokemon weakness, because you're likely not going to be running into that kind of trouble. The next thing that you want to consider in building your team is the role that each Pokemon will play on your team. The roles for in-game are pretty simple. Most of the time, you're just going to be going for a sweeping. Just as that implies, the goal is to get KOs as quickly as possible. A lot of Pokemon fit this bill. In an in-game team, most of the time, your Pokemon end up fitting this bill. The next role that you want to consider, though, is catching. It is always important to have someone around who's able to help you catch Pokemon, especially in a game with Pokedex requirements like this game has, where you want to catch a lot of things. And you always want to be able to catch a shiny. Definitely having someone at least who can inflict a status move of some kind. Sleep or paralysis, again, are the best for that, because you won't be running into any they KO'd themselves with damage from poison or burn. And ice just doesn't have a move that can automatically cause freezing. So it's just nice to have someone who can catch. Our catcher role was filled quite admirably by Pi, it was very helpful along the way. And then the other role that a Pokemon can certainly have is tanking. This is certainly better for defensively minded Pokemon, but really it's just any Pokemon who can handle kind of your biggest weaknesses. It's just nice to have a tank around most of the time. The other thing that you can always consider is to have what I refer to as the beast in the back for when things go wrong. Basically, any Pokemon who I've rated as being reliable in the ratings along this game can fit this bill. What you're looking for is someone who can say, you know what, this particular Pokemon I've run into is causing me problems. I want to handle those problems. Our particular beast in the back, our team is kind of full of them, but most of the time, Bolt has been able to come in and handle any problem we've been having. Carly has also filled that role very well. So, they're the most reliable of our Pokemon. They can pretty much handle things. Even if they're weak to them, they can at least put up a fight. So that's been our role. A lot of the times this can even just be, hey, I wanted a legendary Pokemon. I'm using a legendary Pokemon. No bigger beast than a legend. So with all of that in mind, I just wanted to go over for this particular game, because that was kind of for any game in the first 3 generations, and then slight modifications can apply it to any Pokemon game whatsoever. But the full list of Pokemon who were rated 9 or above, so the strongest Pokemon in-game for this game, those would be Venusaur, Charizard, Blastoise, who got a 10 out of 10, Nidoking, Nidoqueen, Golem, Machamp, Vaporeon, Dragonite, Dodrio, Snorlax, who also got a 10 out of 10, Kangaskhan, Slowbro, who is a Leaf Green exclusive, Lapras, Weezing, Articuno, Zapdos, who's again 10 out of 10, best Pokemon in the game, and Moltres. That gives you a grand total of 18 Pokemon rated a 9 or better by me. And again, to reiterate the Pokemon rankings, I have used every single Pokemon in this game at one point or another in time. So this is my ratings are based on this is how they perform in this in-game. And the ratings are also sort of based around a combination of how dominant are they and how fun will they be to use. Because, it's a video game. Video games are supposed to be fun, so we build our teams to be fun. In addition to those, you definitely want to always consider the gap fillers, because those Pokemon up top, they don't necessarily fill every role. They're just very better at the roles that they do fill than the other Pokemon. But anyone who's rated 8 out of 10 is still a very good Pokemon. The 8 rankings included Butterfree, Raichu, Alakazam, Mr. Mime, Gengar, Arcanine, who's a FireRed exclusive, Jolteon, Flareon, Scyther, another FireRed exclusive, Starmie, another Leaf Green exclusive, Jinx, Tauros, and Hitmonlee. And I'll also throw in a special mention here to Aerodactyl, who only got a 7 out of 10, but the reason for that was that he came far too late in the game. If he didn't come so late, he would have gotten a much better ranking than he did, because he would be more usable. So if you're just looking for build my team and I'll worry about the grinding later, he would certainly fit this bill. That gives you 14 Pokemon in the 8 or better, including that, well, in the 8 out of 10 category, including the Aerodactyl, which gives you a total of 32 Pokemon who will not have significant problems for the entire game. They can, at very least, handle everything that their typing and moveset is built to handle without any trouble. So if you're building just the absolute best to destroy the world team, and we're going to throw this one up on, we're going to throw all of the teams up, but this one in particular, if you wanted the highest rated team for this game, it would be Blastoise, Snorlax, Zapdos, either Nidoking or Nidoqueen, and then for type-wise, Machamp would be next. That leaves a gap in you need a special attacker, because really at this point you only have one with kind of Blastoise and the Nido filling a mixed role. So to maximize that role, get that second purely special attacker, you really want to pull from the 8 out of 10 range, so Alakazam, for example. So even with the highest rated team, if you want your team to actually fill the rest of the guidelines I've been creating here, you're going to have to pull from the lower ranked list, because that's just how in-game teams work. Sometimes you can't always go for the absolute best of the best. Now, beyond that, you can just build a great team for each starter, not based around totally the points rankings, and not including any legendary Pokemon in case you want to do that. So I just have some recommendations. They're not me saying this is absolutely the best team for this starter, but just me trying to say, hey, spread the love to as many Pokemon as possible. Each starting Pokemon can have a completely unique team to them that fills every role they need to. So, Team Bulbasaur, which we're going to throw up on screen right now, would include Venusaur, Golem, Lapras, Dodrio, Jolteon, and Machamp. Team Charmander, which will now be appearing on screen, could include Charizard, Raichu, Nidoqueen, Snorlax, Mr. Mime, and Vaporeon. And then Team Squirtle, now showing up, could include Blastoise, Nidoking, Alakazam, Flareon, Aerodactyl, and Kangaskhan. All of those teams are just sample suggestions that follow all of the guidelines I've laid out so far, and or I've laid out in total, and they can just be really good in-game teams for you. And of course, you can mix and match along the way there, as long as you don't conflict type-wise, really. You're building a really solid team that'll help you a lot in this game. And yeah, that's kind of the basics of building an in-game team. There's a lot of different opinions on this. These are just kind of my suggestions that have worked along the way here. But I really like them, and I like the teams that you can put together just based on that. So, you know, if you're playing FireRed or Leaf Green version, those are my suggestions for how to build a really good team. And next time, we are going to be talking about the ordinary in-game mechanics that you are likely to see in most of your playthroughs. So, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time for that.